Good morning. We will pay attention to prepaid expenses today. The following information was obtained at the end of the financial year, 30 April 2015. The rent expense balance was 8,100. That means that all the expenses that was paid during the year, the bank was credited and rent expense was debited, and that gave us the total of 8,100. But included in that 8,100, there is rent prepaid for 1 month. We can't just calculate the rent prepaid by dividing the 8,100 with 13, because there was an increase of 10% on the 1st of January. So we have to do a calculation to determine what is the rent prepaid for the next year. Take into account that the end of the financial year is 30 April, so the opening date for the previous financial year was 1 May 2014. And then in the calculation, you must also take into account that the increase was on 1 January 2015. Okay, so if we look at the calculation, from the 1st of May 2014, the first day of the financial year, up to 31st of December, the day just before the increase in the rent. So for this 8 months, we paid Y amount per month because we don't know what is the amount per month. So that gives us 8Y. From the 1st of January 2015, up to the 31st of May 2015, we paid the increased amount. That means we didn't only pay up to the 30th of April because they say we paid 1 month in advance. So we paid for 5 months that Y amount. Normally you will say 10% over 100 times the amount that's Y. So above the line it's 10 times Y gives me 10Y. Below the line is 100, so divide by 100. And that will give me 5 times Y is 5Y. 5 times 10 is 50 divided by 100 is 0.50Y. So Y will give us 600 Rand. The 600 is before the increase. We paid in advance at the end of the year, so we want to know what was the amount after the increase. Therefore, we will work out the 10% on the 600, 60 Rand, so the prepaid amount at the end of the year is 660. We will credit rent expense account with the 660 so that we can reduce the amount to the actual expense for the year, because to the profit and loss account we only want to show the expense for the current year if there was no prepaid amounts. Because I credit the rent expense account, I will debit my prepaid expense account. So I go and I create an asset that will be shown in my balance sheet at the end of the year as a current asset. In the income statement, we will show the 7440. Then the first day of the next financial year, we have to do a reverse entry. So the prepaid expense account must be closed off, and we will credit the prepaid expense with the 660, and we will debit rent expense with 660. So it means we cancel this prepaid expense because now both sides are 660, and we show on the first day that we've got a balance of 660, so there was already an expense paid for the current year. What did we do the previous year? We actually balanced our rent expense account to say that the rent expense was 8,100. The amount that we want to take to the income statement is 7,440. So we calculated a balancing figure, and there I bring that balancing figure down. At the end of the year, you will always complete the adjustment, and on the first day of the next financial year, you will reverse that adjustment. If we look at the information that we learned today, we see that when there's a prepaid expense at the end of the year, we must determine what is the amount. Then an entry must be completed for the prepaid expense to decrease the expense to the total expense that is just for the current year. So the total expense for the current year can be taken to the profit and loss account so that the profit for the year can be determined. An asset must be created that can be recorded in the balance sheet or the statement of financial position as a current asset under. On the first day of the next financial year, the adjustment must be reversed. So what we did at the end of the previous year must be reversed to indicate that some of the expense for the current year was already paid. So we will debit our expense account and we will credit the prepaid expense account.